Welcome to the BeBattleReady Podcast, where we take a deep dive into what it takes to be battle ready in your lifestyle so that you can go to war on your life and the marketplace and win.
Way messier route and decided I'm going to make it happen to me. I'm going to make it happen instead of let it happen to me. And so I just sort of locked myself in a room for the weekend and just really tried to peel back layers and figure out what I wanted my life to look like 5 years from that day. And at the end of that weekend, I had it and it was incredible. But I realized it was just really, really hard to do that process by myself. And I knew right then I just did not want anyone to have to lock themselves in a room by themselves to do the process. So I kind of created a methodology to really take something that feels so nebulous and really break it down into steps so that anybody can really go through and have it be something that they can get to an end point and not just feel like they're, struggling along the way to even figure out where to start.
Yeah, absolutely. And you have this 3-level process. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I love what you talked about in terms of pillars, right? Your pillars, and I know one of them is purpose, which is so, so crucial. And for me, the pillars come down to really time, decisions, and clarity. So the first pillar is you've got to stop wasting time, right? And all of us are wasting time in different areas and different facets of our life. And we know that. It's not like it's rocket science, right? But a lot of it's just kind of bringing everything to the surface, connecting the dots, and kind of seeing, like you said, what's really working for us, what's really in alignment, what is really out of alignment, and what are we ultimately wasting time on. Maybe we're wasting time in it for the last month, maybe it's been years, but sometimes we just need someone or some process to kind of help us really recognize that. So that's the first pillar. Once you've kind of gotten those things out of the way, then you can really start to focus on clarity and really, really gain crystal clarity on where you're headed long term. And that's where it sort of all becomes this process of creating a memory of the future, which I know sounds kind of crazy, but there are some pretty incredible brain science things that happen when you do that, when you're able to create that absolutely crystal clear picture of the future that you're heading towards. And then the last pillar is all about decision making. And it's really ensuring that when you have that clarity, you have a filter in place. And that filter helps you figure out, what's an opportunity, what's a distraction disguised as an opportunity. And when you know that, you can make such better decisions so much faster.
Yeah, tell me about what you said about the brain science and creating the vision. Let's talk a little more about that. Like, what is that? Like, give us some more information about that. That's super interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's fascinating. I actually had the opportunity to collaborate with a fantastic coach. He does a lot of visualization and mindset work. His name is Kevin Bailey, and he's incredible. And we were sort of collaborating. We were doing a vision rollout for a company. I worked with them on crafting the vision and clarifying it. And then he came in during the rollout and really helped the team do the visualization. And so we were geeking out on all this stuff together. And I sort of knew about the science piece of it, but he really reiterated the fact that when you really truly create this memory of the future and you feel like with every sense and every fiber of your body that you are there, your brain doesn't actually know whether you are literally there or whether it's something that you just made up. It can't tell the difference. So once you're able to do that for yourself, then essentially you have that locked in and your brain is just like, oh yeah, we're just catching up to that. We've already been there. So it really sort of does some really, really critical rewiring. And that's something that really can help when, you face challenges, because, being a visionary is not about not having challenges. It's just like one of my mentors, Ari Weinblatt, he always said, it's not about having no challenges. It's about having better and better challenges instead of just the same challenge again and again and again and again. And a lot of leaders out there are doing amazing. They're, sort of feeling like, hey, I'm pretty close to the top of my game. Maybe I'm not there yet. But when we really peel back the layers and we start to talk about where they're wasting time, they're like, oh my gosh, I've been having the same problem again and again and again. So we got to level up those problems. And part of that comes from visioning.
Yeah. So why do you said that problem over and over again? How does, talk to us some more about that. Like, what is that? What causes that? You said it might be just a vision, or what's there with that?
Yeah, I think a lot of it really comes from a lack of vision. So a lot of times when people get into that pattern, it's because they're just reactive. And again, I see this so often with incredibly successful people. They ain't got a lot on their plate. They're running, a huge business. They have a team. They're trying to figure out how they can take care of themselves, their family needs, all those different things. They're all these different facets of their life, their own financial portfolio, how to make sure the business's finances are rock solid. All these different things are going on. And so a lot of times what happens is that things start to come at them faster and they just go into that reactive mode because they just kind of don't have enough time for everything. When you get into that reactive mode, you kind of default to your sort of old patterns and your old ways of dealing with things, just kind of that first thing that comes to you. So a lot of times it's that they've been in this reactive mode for quite some time and they've just sort of defaulted to, well, if this happens, I'm just going to do this because it puts a Band-Aid on it, or it just kind of slows things down long enough for me to do this other thing, and then I'll put out that fire, and then there's 2 more fires over there, but I know how to at least get those out, and then I can, and that's why so many of these amazing leaders come home feeling exhausted, and everyone is telling them how successful they are, and they're like, yeah, but I kind of feel like I'm dropping the ball and letting things fall through the cracks. So a lot of times these patterns are when we bring everything to the surface, they're so salient. You can see them so clearly, but a lot of times, it's not a normal thing in our day-to-day to kind of take a step back and really think through that and really visualize what those patterns have looked like. So oftentimes it's not until we do that so we really can recognize those patterns and how they've been affecting us.
Awesome. Yeah, it's I did a podcast one time on duct tape and twine, and it reminded me of you're just putting Band-Aids on stuff and not really solving problems. You're just, stuck in this hustler mode. So awesome. So one of the things that we were talking months ago about, was the 2 different type of decision makers. And for me, it was a big eye-opening moment because I was like, oh, I never even thought of it like that. So tell us a little more about that.
Yeah, so a lot of times, and I remember it was really cool having that conversation with you because you have so much experience in business and with so many other business leaders, and hearing that kind of resonate was really neat because, like you said, there's really sort of 2 types of decision makers. One is that type of really fast gut feel decision maker who can just see something, throw whatever at me, and I'm going to tell you what the answer is. And sometimes that can work really, really well for them. But oftentimes when they kind of start to get in this reactive mode and things are just coming at them faster and they don't have that clarity on where they're going, then they start to get to this point where they make that fast decision, but then they end up second guessing it. And they spend way more time rehashing that fast decision than they did to actually make the decision. So it's yeah, it's cool that you were able to make it quickly, but if you spend 3 times as long rehashing it and wondering what if and wondering if you should take it back, then that's not really helpful. The other type of decision maker is that, we've all heard of paralysis by analysis. That's that person who is thinking, I have to know every single last detail for me to even begin to think about making a final decision on this. And sometimes they have to bring in, everyone in their cohort, whether that's personal, professional, or whatever it is. Sometimes they just have to marinate. Maybe they have to do a bunch of research. And oftentimes what happens with them is, maybe they really got a lot of background knowledge and can make a really educated, decision. But by that point, maybe the decision's totally passed them by. Or maybe somebody else has swooped in on that decision or taken that opportunity away. And now all the sort of research they did, how fast things move nowadays, it's obsolete the next day. So both of those can be really tricky. And there's obviously benefits to both slow and fast decision making as well. The idea again comes down to, do you have that filter? Do you have that filter between what's going to get you closer to or farther away from your definition of success at a specific point in the future? If you do, then you're going to be way more equipped to make some decisions fast because you just know them right. You can just tell, closer to or farther away, boom, done. Other ones you might need to marinate on more, but instead of the question that you're marinating on being, do I, take path A or path B, A, B, A, B, A, B, your only question is, I don't know if I'm going to do A or B or Z or not take the path at all, but my only question truly is this getting me closer to or farther away from my vision? That's it. That's the only question at the end of the day.
Yeah, that's beautiful how simple it is. And, I think if you're in those positions and you have a lot of things coming at you, you need to simplify, you need to create frameworks. That's I think for myself, I grew up as a bad student, right? I slept through school and, probably had dyslexia or something. I think I was diagnosed at one point, but, when things are coming at fast and everything's already mentally chaotic and organizationally chaotic, creating frameworks and organization and structure, especially if you're moving something forward, a group of people is crucial to, creating simplicity and effectiveness within what you're doing. So.
Yeah, that's huge. And that's actually, I'm glad you brought up the team aspect of it as well, because a lot of times, once you get your business to a certain level, a certain number of people, there's just, as we all know, there's exponential complexity that's been introduced, the more people that you bring on. And so at some point, a lot of times leaders will have people coming to them again and again, always asking them, can I do this? Can I do this? What about this? Does this fit? Can we do that? And they're like, oh, I can't even process my own thoughts, let alone think about all yours. And so now once that vision is clarified at the organizational level, now everyone in the organization also has that one question. Now, are they going to answer it the same exact way the leader would every time? No, but they're growing as visionary leaders themselves. And once they go through that learning, they're going to grow and evolve. And now it's not just up to that one leader at the top of the organization feeling like it's all on them. Because some of the best ideas, of course, are going to come from people at other parts in the organization, because they're sort of closer to the customer and they're going to have perspective that the leader never will.
Yeah, I mean, that's where, when I hear that, I'm like, okay, that type of problem, I connect with that because I'm like, two things that person, that leader needs is a plan and a playbook and, a way to communicate, with their team. So I love it. So, what's interesting since we are in COVID and we might be going into another lockdown, we don't know what's going on, and you've been dealing with and working with, visionary entrepreneurs, talk to us about how the vision, because a lot of people would think like, oh, you've got to, just deal with the battle at hand, right? And it's very vital, to be what we consider on this podcast about being battle ready, is to have that vision clarified. But, talk to us about the experiences you had dealing with some of your clients and about, when COVID came, how did it change their vision and all those different things? If it's
totally.
Vision.
Yeah. So there's so many, there's so many really fascinating pieces of this. One piece is that there's just a lot of misconceptions when it comes to vision. And a lot of leaders are feeling like this idea of vision is just kind of irrelevant for them right now because they're like, are you kidding? I don't even know what's going to happen in the next 5 days, let alone the next 5 years. Why would I even vision? Like that makes no sense. I'm going to wait till all this is over, dust settles, and then I can create my vision, right? Which makes sense if that's kind of your mindset. But there's also this idea of visions sort of fit like nesting dolls, right? Like, those Russian nesting dolls that all kind of fit inside each other. So you can think of that in a lot of different ways. And one of them is time. And so absolutely is a long-term 5-year vision incredibly powerful? Absolutely. But if you don't have that in place right now and you don't even know your head from your toes right now, then having a vision for your day or a vision for the next 90 days can be potentially even more powerful for you right now than sort of going into this full process. You might not be there yet, and that's okay. So for the leader who has no vision in place at all and is just absolutely feeling like they are on this emotional roller coaster, then for them, and there's some really great tools that I have for people to be able to dive into this idea of what does my definition of success for the day look like? What is that daily vision? And have their teams really answer that question too, which can be really helpful, especially now that we're remote. Then again, maybe if they're kind of a little bit past that, maybe they're thinking like, what's that 9-day horizon? Maybe it is reopening. Maybe it's the potential of closing and then reopening again. So maybe that 90-day horizon, that feels like they can really latch onto it. So that's sort of what I always talk to leaders about if they don't have a vision in place and this is happening right now. And I had the chance to talk with several CEO roundtables about this concept of daily visioning and sort of like give them the tools right then and there. And so they were able to take them for themselves and back to their teams as well. So that's one piece of it. The next piece of it is that if you do have your vision in place already, then it's this idea that, the vision itself, the document, is not about the how. That's the roadmap or the plan or the strategic, whatever you want to call it, right? That's the battle plan, right? Like you got to have that in place. Now that can and should change. That needs to be flexible. You need to be nimble. You got to be able to pivot. You need to recalibrate. But the thing is that if you just imagine trying to navigate, right? You can only really have one variable. So if your vision is always a moving target and your path is always a moving target too, you literally cannot navigate that way. So if you already have a vision in place and you're experiencing all this change, then just remember that your vision, your destination remains the same. The path that you're going to take to get there is different, needs to be different, can be different. And one of the things that I think is so fascinating too is that the whole visionary mindset is about really thinking before you jump to the how, right? Because a lot of leaders right now are like, okay, here's the problem. How do I fix it? How do I get past this? If you only think about the how, your only answers are going to be about that you could do this, you could do this, you could do this, you could do this. You're just reacting. So the visionary mindset is being more proactive at saying, all right, what do we want this to look like? Like either 9 days from now or 5 years from now or 1 day from now, what would that look like? How would we know we've gotten to where we wanted to go? Then once you figure that out, working backwards and figuring out how to get there. And so I think a lot of times too, when you just jump to the how, you stay locked into the current state of what things look like and just making little changes. And sometimes organizations, the companies that we've seen pivot and do amazing things are the ones that didn't stay stuck, just tinkering with the system sort of as it already is, which is one of my favorite quotes from the Toyota way, So it's really about thinking through, if I was going to start my business today in this environment, what would it look like? The vision itself probably wouldn't change that much, but how you did it absolutely would. And I know that's not necessarily an easy thing to do if you're sitting here thinking, oh my goodness, how am I going to make payroll tomorrow? But I just keep thinking of, however long in the future, they're going to put down a case study in some business school thing and say, all right, what if you were in the middle of a pandemic and you had to start your business then? What would you do? It's like, what if you had the opportunity to wipe the slate clean and say, all right, still know where I'm going, that's still in place, but let me really get innovative about a totally new approach and not just be beholden to what I kind of thought was the only way to get there before.
Yeah, I think an awesome analogy is if you're going to take a road trip from California to New York City, right? If the level of, you have a level 1 basic. I'm just going to go to New York, right? But I don't know where I'm starting,
right.
And specifically to COVID, it's or any type of crisis is if you were a third of the way into your trip and there was a car accident, the roads were shut down, what would you do? Would you try to take a dirt road and try to get around it, or are you just going to stay stuck where you're at, right? And in some cases we had to pause, but, at that time it was a great time to pull back. But I think that if individuals would look at what's going on now, where they're going as a trip from here to New York, with, all these different obstacles around the, potentially popping up, what would you do? So,
yeah. Well, and I love that you mentioned that too. I had a visionary who was so great. Really, soon after, he had a lot of challenges he had to face. He had to do some major layoffs and all. So, he was very, very directly affected. And he said, we were texting and he said, yep, my destination's still the same. Vehicle might have to change, but I'm still going to get there. So he was saying not only my path might need to change, but the vehicle to get there might have to change too. And so I love that he was thinking about what that could look like and really opening himself up to that and not just, again, getting stuck in that total reactive mode of only, well, this is how we've always done it. Maybe we can shift a little to the right or the left. Hey, maybe you're in a whole new vehicle. Maybe you're on a dirt bike instead. So here we go.
Absolutely. Yeah. that's it. I was actually thinking about a little bit earlier. It's what if it was raining? You're not going to be driving the convertible with the top down, right?
Right.
In this case, you might need some type of Baja 1000 truck or something to get there, just so you can handle anything.
Yeah.
So awesome. So, what else? Who are the types of people that you're currently size of businesses, kind of ideal person clients that you're working with?
So there's sort of two different. One is for my one-on-one visionaries who we go through a really, really intensive process. And that's something that's fully one-on-one. And I work with at this point, I have about 5 left for the year, right? So that's a really, really intensive process because I'm completely in with that visionary every single step of the way. So I have just been working with this current visionary over the past 3 Fridays. His last intensive is this Friday, and then we'll continue from there. But he's just the most forefront in my mind. And for him, he has a huge business that is in a space that's actually blowing up right now. So he's excited about that. But as other leaders watching this who are also in spaces that are doing well right now, you also know that comes with a lot of its own type of overwhelm. So yeah, you might not be facing a crisis of lower sales, but if you have increased sales and you have to figure out how to do more with less and all those different pieces, that brings its own challenges. So he's in that place. But the other thing that he shares with a lot of other visionaries that I work with is that he has 2 young kids. He's in his late 30s, early 40s, and he's in that stage where a lot of things are changing. His age and stage is changing. Ages and stages are changing for his kids. for his partner, his business and his business partner and the stage that he's at in his career. All those things are kind of shifting. So he's somebody who's already done a ton, already has a huge amount of success under his belt. And now he's like really getting ready for that next chapter and wants to be incredibly intentional and proactive because he knows that he can make that chapter accelerate much, much faster than if he just kind of like lets it happen. So that's kind of like the one-on-one visionary is typically at that point where they're an absolute expert in what they do. They're kind of climbing their mountain and they're ready to go. And they're just like, well, maybe I already got to the peak. What's next? Then another type of visionary that I work with, and that's something that I create sort of like a visionary cohort, and they're all really learning from each other. And oftentimes those are people who are either they have their own book of business. So maybe they're in sales, or maybe they're somebody who is in an industry where they're supported by an organization, but they're really doing their own thing. Or they're a small business owner or somebody who doesn't necessarily have a huge team, but they're starting to grow it and want to make sure that they have that clarity, not just for themselves, but as they grow the team to be able to recruit with that as well. So it's a little bit of sort of two different types of visionaries that I typically work with, but they all sort of share that one common thread, which is I just refuse to let my future happen to me. I'm going to make it happen.
Awesome. Well, if anybody wanted to get a hold of you, how could we get a hold of you?
The best way is just email Lois at truenorthvisionaries.com. And there's actually, I have a free resource if anybody would like to check it out for your listeners, Anthony. It's just the Decision Makers Matrix. So it's really a tool that they can start utilizing to be able to sort of understand how to, again, switch their day from feeling like it's happening to them to making it happen. And when we start to do that with our days, we can start to do that with our months and our years. So if that's helpful, that's another great way just to sort of reach out and connect, and we can go from there.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you being on, and we'll put all your links and stuff and how to get a hold of you in the show notes. And I really appreciate the time.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Anthony. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me.
All right. Thank you.
Bye.
This concludes another episode of the BeBattleReady Podcast. If you're looking to put it all together across all the areas of your life and be battle ready, come get connected with powerful leaders in our BeBattleReady Facebook group, where we will be dropping new battles to win each day.